Well, essentially, what Parliament has done is just gone into giving the space for independent candidates to contest, to comply with the judgment, but not doing so in a way that will encourage it to be a fair contest and a fair addition. So they're doing a tick box exercise to add it in the letter, but not in the spirit of a fair process. So the court judgment wasn't just about independent candidates at a generic level. It was about giving every citizen the right to contest an election, so that even if you have the right to be a part of a party, you should have the right to not be a part of the party but still contest. That was the spirit in which it was done. What Parliament has done, and through the Home Affairs minister, is they've put together a bill that makes it inherently an unfair contest, because they've asked independent candidates in the current bill that they have on the table to contest one-on-one with the entirety of the list of a party. So in the local government elections, where we already have independent candidates able to contest, they can contest against a ward councillor. Even if that ward councillor is from a political party, it is a one-on-one contest between one person, and it's first past the post. The PR ballot is a different ballot for political parties and groups. In this bill, they're saying an independent candidate as one person would be contesting the entire list of a political party. They would be doing so in the entirety of a province. So now we have substituted a ward or a ward for a province. And one person has to contest the entire province. We have that independent candidates would need to pay more money and get almost 10,000 more signatures than a political party just to register with the IEC. But most importantly, independent candidates would need to get more votes than a political party to get a single seat. It is an inherently unfair set of conditions that they've set.
Yeah, I mean, let's get to the reasoning now offered by lawmakers presiding over the Electoral Amendment Bill to decide that independent candidates should receive a certain number of votes to qualify standing for elections, while political parties only require a much lesser number. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit and clarify the issue of the thresholds needed to qualify.
You know, Parliament has not explained itself and its rationale. In fact, the ministerial advisory committee that was set up by the Minister of Home Affairs gave Parliament two options. Well, gave the minister two options. He only took one option to Parliament. But the first option that they gave was to take the version that we have of voting at the local government level that allows for independent candidates and really just adjust it for provincial and national levels. That way, we're dealing with a system that we already are using. We've tried and tested it ourselves. We're not even looking at an international best practice. And it's a system that has rationales in it that make sense, that we've all agreed on. Instead, they've gone for this other version of this bill that seems to protect the interest of the big parties, because the big parties are avoiding two main things in this thing they add. One is they're avoiding genuine contestation of their power and the party bosses' power, because right now in our system, the party bosses have the power to decide who will be in Parliament, have the power to decide who will be fired from Parliament, and the people don't, and they don't want that to happen. But the other thing that they're really afraid of is creating real constituencies in the country. And our real constituency would mean that in our local area, we would be voting for a local person who we can hold directly accountable. That's something that parliamentarians don't want to be doing because they've been used to voting according to the party line. And really, this won't only affect independent candidates, because political parties would have to contest on those one-on-one votes and seats as well. And that's what they're running away from. They're running away from accountability and the power of the party bosses to decide rather than the people.
Yeah. Civil society says that, including organisations such as yourself, is against the government signing the Electoral Amendment Bill into law in its current form. So I need us to explain to the average citizen that is listening to this interview the changes of this amendment bill. How is it going to affect South Africans? And my second part of the question is, what do you suggest should happen between now and the 10th of December, given the limited time that's left on this?
So the way it's going to affect us is it's going to fundamentally change the way that we vote and make it a more unfair vote. We've always prided ourselves in South Africa on having free and fair elections. This bill will make our election process unfair. And whether or not we want to support independent candidates or we like independent candidates isn't the point. The point is we can't have an unfair process for it. We must make sure that everything that we do is constitutional. And we believe that this bill will make the way that we vote unconstitutional. It will also make politicians unaccountable to people. And we have an opportunity here to increase accountability. What most South Africans don't know, something I didn't know until a few months ago, is that parliamentarians and parties, when they get into parliament, they get to decide who their constituencies are and who their communities are that they represent. So, for example, a member of parliament can live in Cape Town, but can be the representative for somebody in Eldorado Park. As it stands right now, of course, political parties get to choose for themselves what they do. We have an opportunity here to correct that and make sure that they're accountable to us. So what can we do before the 10th of December? We need to ask members of parliament to explain the bill. Firstly, we must ask them, have they read the bill? Because many members of parliament haven't read this bill. And they can't explain the inconsistencies because they haven't read it. We must ask them to explain to us why it is better for an independent candidate to have to contest and if an independent candidate gets 1 million votes of their own, they only qualify for 1 seat. If a party gets 1 million votes, they qualify for 9 seats. Members of parliament must explain why they are happy to vote for that, and we must put pressure on them. We must make noise about this. We must lobby about this. We must take to the streets about this. We must email and phone our members of parliament and tell them to say no to this bill. And we must do the same with the president. On the 21st of December, the president's supposed to sign this, and he has the power to not sign it, and he's done it before with other bills. We have sent a bill back to parliament, told them, I can't put my name to this thing because it's unconstitutional. The president must also be put under pressure not to sign an unconstitutional bill, because we are putting our elections in jeopardy, because if that thing is unconstitutional on the 21st of December or the 10th of December, we are going to have to stop it with the courts and say to the courts, you cannot allow an unconstitutional thing, and that's just going to put us all in jeopardy. We are appealing to the public to really read the bill, to learn about it. We're going to be putting out as much information as we can, but to put pressure on the MPs and the president not to sign the bill.
Yeah, and this, of course, is, it's been something that's been 2 years in the making. We've been waiting, then they asked for an extension, and that extension is the end of this year. The reality is that if, in its current form, if there are any changes, this will, and the IFC have said this on numerous occasions, that if this is not signed and finalised by December, chances are that the 2014 or 2024 elections, I beg your pardon, are certainly going to be delayed. They need at least 18 months to prepare for an election. So, with all of these delays and all of the changes that we're asking for, the reality is a delayed election. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel incredibly upset because we are not causing the delay. As the people who are rejecting this bill and telling Parliament to reject this bill, we are not causing the delay. Parliament has caused this delay themselves. The judgment came out in 2020. They were given 2 years. They did nothing for 18 months. Parliament sat on its hands for 18 months and only had a bill on the table because the Minister of Home Affairs had put one on the table. Had they not done that, who knows when they would have started to do their work. Parliament has become incredibly lazy about doing their actual work of creating law, and now they've dragged their feet. They tell us that they tick the boxes of doing public participation, yet the public still doesn't know about this bill. And now, when we are trying to contest and challenge this very unfair bill, they have ignored the public. We have written to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee several times, as Rivonia Circle, as other organizations, explaining to them that this is not right, that these things don't make sense, and they have flat out ignored it. And so they are putting our elections at jeopardy by not doing their work and not doing it in a way that is constitutional. And so if these parliamentarians vote yes for this thing, we as South Africans must vote no against them at the elections, because they are the ones that have put us all in jeopardy.
On a related issue, what is the view, and I think you alluded to it right in the beginning of the interview, what is the view of civil society in terms of how parliamentarians should be deployed post-2024? I mean, bearing in mind the country's current proportional representation system, is the country's PR system the best system for South Africa in retrospect? Does it actually serve the country in its current form?
What we must remember about the current bill with electoral act that we have, it was an invention of the pre-1994 negotiations. And those negotiations were about getting a stable country towards the 1994 elections. And so it was a compromise reached in order to make sure that smaller minority groupings in the country were accommodated. So the party system was created and the PR system was created. The current suggestion that's being made, especially from the Ministerial Advisory Committee, just to take the system that we have at local government level and bring it to national and provincial, does not change that part. Parties will still be able to have proportional representation. It will be for half of the seats in parliament. But the other half then allows people to independently contest, but also allows for what we call a constituency-based system that is real. And this is one of the things we really think is important, is that at the level of your community, of your ward, of your district, however we define a constituency, you should be able to vote for a person who lives in your area to go and represent you in parliament. That person should be accountable to you directly, and you should have the ability to hire that person through the vote and fire that person. Right now, only political parties can recall MPs. So MPs can do whatever they want unless a political party chooses to recall them, they will not be fired. In a constituency-based system, we can hire and fire directly. And I think that's important. The second big thing is the list system. Right now, we're dealing with a closed list system where the political party, and in most cases, it's the leadership of political parties, are the only ones who get to decide behind closed doors who's going to be on the lists. And we are saying we need an open list system where you have a more competitive process and a more engaged participatory process where we can say who's going to be on the list and on the ballot. And so there are many changes that can come through this, but all of them must lead to citizens who feel like their votes are not being wasted, and to citizens who feel that members of parliament have to vote the way they want them to vote, have to do the things that we want them to do as the people of the country, not the party bosses.
And the bottom line is accountability is something that seems to be missing already in government. And now, you know, the question marks around accountability and independent candidates is something that is really in question here. I mean, the issues surrounding independent candidates are becoming a big sticking point in this electoral amendment. And they happen to be the very reason why the New Nation movement challenged the act in the first place. So again, as we wrap up the interview, what does this mean for the 2024 elections if these concerns are not ironed out? We've spoken about delays, but what else? I mean, what lies at stake here?
What lies at stake is our fundamental right and ability to vote in a fair process. What lies at stake is probably the proliferation of more parties. And I think Musi Maimani's party is actually a really good example of this. Musi Maimani did not want to form a party. He was happy and willing to contest as an independent until he saw that the rules were unfair. All of a sudden, he's now created a party, and we've been lamenting in the country. There are too many parties forming. The reason why 325 parties contest in the last election is because everybody feels they are compelled right now in this set of circumstances to create a party just to contest. We don't need to put people into those situations. We can create a context where people can vie as independent candidates, but most importantly, we must make sure that this gets done in good time and that we get parliamentarians to sign this off in good time, because the IEC needs 18 months to create the conditions under which we can have a free and fair and credible election. And if they don't get this right by December, we are going to have to go to a court and say, fix this thing. And the court will then have to decide how we vote. And that's also not ideal. So really, parliamentarians must do their job. They must do it properly. They must do it in a way that brings us to a free and fair election. That is what people died for. Besides the right to vote, liberation heroes people in communities who protested on the streets died for a free and fair election. That's what parliamentarians are trying to take away.
All right, leave it there for now. Rivonia Circle Director Tessa discussing why civil society is opposed to Parliament signing the Electoral Amendment Bill in its current form. You'll remember the Concourt gave Parliament until the 10th of December to finalise amendments to this Electoral Act. So, Tessa, again, thanks for your time.